Okay, Sunniva, Saturday morning, the sun's out, and you've got what I can only describe as a beauty on your bench. What's going on?
So it's a pretty old tuba. It's an old boozy and it's seen better days. Today we're trying to just getting up and running again because the whole lead pipe with the first slide has come off. Several repairers have tried to repair this throughout the years, I think. We're wondering if it's been actually adapted for a different pitch. So it's a bit touch and go with it. We'll try and get it up into a playable order by reattaching this, getting as many solder joints as we can to stabilize it, and try and do something with this terrible belt crease. It's incredibly thick metal, this.
Yeah,
and
that's going to be fun.
yeah, it's just to at least not get it worse.
Okay, well, we'll pop back later in the day and we'll see how you're getting on. Okay, Sunniva, so we're back with you. I can see this is all strapped up and ready. I know you've been doing a bit of work in the background, so just tell us where we are now and what we're going to do next.
Okay, so while you weren't looking, I've silver soldered this. So they're two plates with a little ball joint between, and that has to be silver soldered as we're soft soldering these onto it. If they were all soft soldered, they'd just fall apart when we heat it. So we want a really strong joint in the middle, which I've already done. And then we're going to soft solder these on each side and also these ones here. The thing is as well is that this needs to be soldered. Then we have this whole leg steady onto the bell. And then I can start with the rest of it. This is really the first step of getting it solid and stable.
It's getting that rigidity back into structure, like you say, isn't it? But
Yes,
just
absolutely.
for the layman's out there, explain the difference between soft solder and silver solder.
So soft solder is basically tin. It's really, really soft. You can bend it with your fingers, and it melts at a much lower temperature than a lot of other metals. I think it's about 300 degrees Celsius. While silver solder is actual silver, so it needs a much higher melting point, and that's why we can silver solder two things together and then soft solder them onto something else without the first joint breaking.
Okay.
It's almost all parts of brass instruments are then silver soldered and soft soldered, and woodwind as well.
Cool. Okay, well, let's have a bit of fire.
Yeah. So first of all, I've fluxed all these joints. Flux cleans up the surface and also makes everything just flow a bit easier. But we're gonna try and put some solder in. These stays here are not original and not fitted to the instruments really, and we are gonna have to do a bit of a magical job here to try and make it work.
Jiggery pokery, we call it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're trying to melt the flux so it bubbles and cleans. You can see how it changes colour.
Yeah.
You hear a bit of crackling of the metal moving, but we go in with the tin and make sure there's enough underneath here.
And this is
There we go.
obviously seen a bit of action with this instrument, and they've got a time specific budget for you, so you're having to work quick, and it perhaps if it was a newer instrument, you'd have a bit more time.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It would be a little bit different. Yeah.
And also, I mean, some people have an old instrument that has a very high sentimental value and they want to restore it, but that would be a very different job to this. This is very much minimum playing order. Just make sure it doesn't fall apart when you pick it up, and that it's airtight.
Yeah.
So it's spilling a bit of solder here, but nothing we can't tidy up.
So as you're doing this, what are you looking for and what are you looking at?
So I'm very much looking at how the solder melts and how it moves. Solder is actually attracted to the heat, so I can go on the back of things and pull the solder around. But it changes kind of in reflection and just general surface look when it's melting, and it goes completely liquid in here. So I can feed it in and I can see how it makes a nice joint. You can hear it creaking from the metal taking heat.
Okay.
But I want it really to fill this whole.
We've made these kind of, you've made these straps so you have got to line it all up and then you've got to get it on. And
Yeah, so I've chosen to do this one first because this is a slide here. So we need that one to be straight so the inner leg can move parallel with this one. But because it's already had so much work, it's actually not quite as we want it. So I thought we'll get this one straight first and then build from there on out.
Cool.
On a lot of modern instruments, it wouldn't be so much hard work. It wouldn't go being going back and forth so much.
Yeah, because you're having to undo other things that have happened in the
Yeah.
past here, aren't you?
And we can see here that the stay that is not original has a gap. I don't know if you can get that on camera, but there's a gap behind here.
Oh yeah.
So I'm
it's
gonna have to
tricky
go,
to show that.
Yeah,
Oh,
but-
there you go.
there you go. So I'm gonna have to fiddle around with it a bit and try and drag the solder through. But yeah, it's a fun part of this job, trying to make it stick together properly.
Cool. Well, we'll leave you to it. We might come back when everything's together
Yeah, see how it
and
goes.
see how the bell is. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, so Sunniva, we're back, and everything's together.
Yep.
We might go into that in a minute, but we're gonna have a quick look at the bell. Yeah.
Yes, so the bell is really, really badly creased. This is an old, very solidly made instrument as well, so the metal is really, really thick. So we're going to try and shift it and see how soft it is. We're not expecting that will go back perfectly. All these creases here are so sharp
Yeah.
that it's probably done a bit of a trick on the plating. If we look on the outside here, it's really done some creasing around here.
So those sharp creases are the worst, really,
Yeah.
aren't they, from a recovery point of view?
Yeah, we'll always have scars from this. With silver plate, we could start polishing it or replate it, but as we know, this is not really the case for this instrument.
Yeah.
So we're just trying to get the shape back so the resonance is alright, and also maybe it can stand, which it barely can at this point.
It's a bit of a wobble.
Yeah, so the first thing to do is really to bring this rim pretty much straight. At the moment now it has a really, really big gap, but it's almost all around. So the thing is really to try and start bringing it down.
So using a
The-
mallet, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a rawhide mallet. It's the biggest one we sell just to have that weight to it. Sometimes with thinner ones you can just push them, but this is one of those where it's not really the case. We have to use some brute force. So I'm trying to hold it down so we have a pivot point and get the point I want pushed over the edge and go to try and force it down. It looks very brutal, but you can see it's already then closer to the table. So we need to put one here as well.
Cool. Yeah, so we're just flattening that up
Yeah.
first.
A bit more. It takes an awful lot of force, this, compared to a lot of other stuff.
Is it your favourite job, though? Whacking things?
Yeah. It's something we try not to do in front of customers, though. People get scared.
Don't worry, there's only thousands seeing it on the internet.
Exactly. This is what happens behind the scenes.
So you're just constantly checking it on that flat surface
Yeah.
just to see, and then...
Basically, we have no chance of getting any of this out without this being flat. It's just how it's made. It needs to go back to the general shape. So we have a bit of a gap
It's
here.
looking better, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot better. Problem is that it's all around, as you can see. And the only point where it's not buckled inwards is here. So that's where I'm keeping as a reference point. This is the lowest point of the rim.
Okay.
And everything else needs to be brought down to touch that. So we're a lot closer.
I suppose you can sort of end up going in circles a little bit.
Oh, absolutely, and you do, and it's a part of the job. So after this, I'm going to push out some of these creases, and I'm going to do this again.
Okay.
Because as I let it go, see there's still a gap here.
Okay, well, we'll let you carry on with that bit, and then maybe we'll come back for some creases. Okay, Sunniva, so you've got that fairly flat on the top there.
Yep.
And we're going to have a go at some of these creases, yeah?
Yeah, we are. I mean, sometimes this is really, really easy. I assume it will be pretty heavy work on this one, just due to the thickness, but let's see. So we call it a rocket roller, and by putting force on the metal, I can roll creases out.
And I saw you lubricated the roller, didn't you, beforehand?
Yeah, it's something we do here. Some people do, some people don't. It's just adding a bit of normal bar of soap, really, just to allow for any scratches and stuff to be taken up by soap instead of getting straight into the metal here.
Cool.
So it's just trying to preserve it. In a way, it probably doesn't matter much with this instrument, but
Yeah.
it's just old habit, really. So let's see. It's by pushing.
And this is quite physical work, you know? You've got that thing up on your arm, and when you get into the big double B flat tubes and stuff, that's a job, isn't it?
completely. And it's mostly actually using your body muscles to push on.
As you can see some of that lifting out.
Yeah, it is working. With this one, the creases are also coming outwards. So it will be a bit both sides here. Let's try and push onto this big one. So, oh, it's very, very sharp. Wondering if we're going to come back to that in a bit. But yeah, it's basically go around the bell doing the small ones. I might put that on the actual mandrel and push onto it later. Because it's so sharp.
But that's the process generally. Presumably there's different size rollers depending on
Yeah.
if you're doing different smaller bells. So even if you're doing a smaller dent in a trumpet, you might use the same sort of technique, obviously not quite over your shoulders.
No, it's exactly the same. And with smaller ones, it's one of the most common things we do to roll out these bell crease, and it makes the job so much easier. Without it, you really have to go by hand and pushing them out, which on this one, for instance, would be a lot harder work than this.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll let you carry on, and maybe we'll just get a final one with you at the end when it's all done, so to speak. Okay, Sunniva, we are back. It is together.
Yep.
All the parts you started with are still there. So let's have a little look how those solder joints are cleaned up.
Yes, so it's a very rough cleanup. This is not a cosmetic looking job. It's not for the looks we're doing this. But we got both these stays on. We got some tackage on here just to keep these from busting and touching. And we've obviously got these back on here, so it's actually leading the air back into the valve block here.
Cool.
We've also made this actually stable. Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, this. And now it looks even weirder in a way. You can see how all these slides are actually different angles, which is not ideal, but it's the way it kind of ended up. When this first came in, we wanted to do a complete different job of actually moving the whole valve block and getting everything straight. But it's a school instrument, and the budget is what it is, so we went for the playing.
Yes, rather than the aesthetics necessarily.
Absolutely.
And let's have a quick look at that bell, because you were doing quite a lot of dent work, and actually that's come up really well. Let me just make sure we can see that. Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. So getting the general, this is the point where this really, really deep crease was. In the end, I did some by hand. I mean, we do everything by hand, but by actually using my burnisher and pushing it out from the inside and going over it to get the rough work done, and then rolling it on a rocket roller. So yeah, it's still not completely perfect, but it's doing what it should now. So yeah.
Cool.
It's always weird when to know when to stop with this.
Yes, yeah. But that's going to go back into some school use then, hopefully, and be tooted around the horn.
They now actually got another tuba.
Fantastic. Cool. All right, thank you, Sunniva.